Is it time for the Detroit Pistons, despite being the first team in the Eastern Conference still in the standings, is it time for them to change their starting lineup and sit Tobias Harris? We'll talk about it today's episode, Locked On Pistons Podcast.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I'm your host, Khahil. I've been covering the Detroit Pistons for the last 4 years, been a credential media member over the last 3 years, and I appreciate all of you guys who have made Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons, hit that subscribe button, or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. And I also want to thank you guys for help making the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network in America. We appreciate all of you guys' support. You guys are absolutely amazing. And again, like I said, we appreciate all of you. Later on, are the Detroit Pistons coming back down to reality just a bit? We'll talk about it, break down the numbers, and come to a conclusion on that. Also, we got the first set of All-Star votes in. There is a Detroit Piston in the top 5. That is Cade Cunningham. Does any other Piston join him in the top 20? We'll talk about it later. But let's start with whether the Detroit Pistons should make a change in the starting lineup. The Pistons, and this is something that will, I guess this is kind of like a two-part conversation, because a lot of this will also be hit on in the second segment when we talk about whether the Pistons are coming back down to reality. So this is going to be kind of like a two-parter here. Should the Detroit Pistons change their starting lineup? They have not been as good of a team over the last 13 or so games. Their starting lineup has not been as effective as of late. And there's been a drop. I don't want to say a drop off. Drop off is too far. There's been I'm trying to find the right word. I don't want to say falling off, but that's literally the only thing. There's been a regression. There you go. That's a better word. On the offensive end of the floor from this team. Now, defensively, they're still really good. Defensively, small sample size. They've went from like 3rd to 6th. They're still really good. But offense, they've fallen down a bit. They've gotten to the 10th best offense over the last 14 to 15 games. How much of that has to do with the starting lineup? I think it's probable that it has quite a bit to do with it. Something that we're noticing that the teams are doing to the Detroit Pistons as of late, and this is something I've talked about over and over on the podcast for the last few weeks, is that teams are now, to start the year, the Pistons were blitzing teams in the half court. How were they doing it? Because they were trapping Cade, and Jalen Duren's improvement as a scorer off the dribble was consistently make them pay. Now, obviously, you had some other things happening. Duncan was shooting really well. Ausar was being uber aggressive with the ball in his hands the first 12-ish games of the year. And the way teams are covering the Detroit Pistons, they were making them pay for it. Now, I feel like as of late, you're seeing less traps against Cade. Less traps. He's still getting trapped a little bit, but not nearly as much. And when Duren gets the ball, teams are focusing in on him. And when he's rolling to the basket, teams are focusing in on him, which opens up other shots. And a shot that has been routinely open, I believe, for the Pistons during this time, it's something I've talked about a lot, is the above-the-break 3 from Tobias. And teams are not really paying Tobias a lot of respect in this regard. And I think it's hurting the Pistons' half-court offense. If they had somebody like Duncan at the 4 position, another high-volume three-point shooter at the 4, I think the Pistons' half-court offense, instead of being 8th right now in the NBA and 10th over the last 16-ish games, I think they would be back to being like a top 6 offense like they were before for the majority of the season at the beginning. So I think that's what they're really missing, and the only way to get that is if they make a move. However, what can you do? What can you do in the meantime? What can you do that you have control of as of right now? I think you have to start seriously considering sitting Tobias. I never thought I'd be saying that, because last year Tobias was really important for the Pistons, and despite his weaknesses, I felt like that what he brought to the team was just too valuable, and they just didn't have anyone else that could really do it. So I thought they would really need him, and that was the case last year. But this year, as I've said over and over on this podcast for years since I've taken over, as the evidence changes, so will my opinion. I will not hold on to priors if my priors turn out to be wrong or right. as the evidence changes, so will my opinion. I use the example. I was not the highest on Isaiah Stewart after his second year. I became a big fan of him after year 3, and now I absolutely love him. I think the evidence has changed on him. He's gotten better. So is my opinion. If that happens, I will change. And I think that's what's happening with Tobias this year. The Pistons, and I haven't looked at this all year. I didn't think of looking at this number. It's honestly kind of shocking. Tobias, the Pistons are 8 points better. 8. Not, and this is over a large sample at this point. They are 8 points better with him off the floor so far this year. That's a pretty big discrepancy. 8 points, that's pretty large. They're winning his minutes still. They have a 1.1 net rating when he's on the floor. But when he's off the floor, they're beating teams by 9.4 points per 100 possessions. Their defense get 8 points better. And their offense stays the exact same. They stay at a 118 offensive rating. Their defense gets 8 points better. I think they need to seriously consider sitting Tobias. Now, I think that's due to defensive concern. I don't think he's as good defensively this year. And offensively, I don't think he brings what they necessarily need. So you're not reaping the benefits of having someone who's struggling defensively and having him out there for offense. I don't think he's really his random post-ups is not what the team needs. I don't think that, let me take that back. Not what the team needs. It's not what the starting lineup needs. Not off the bench. I think that could stabilize things and really calm things down. So I think those would actually be much more needed off the bench rather than in the starting lineup. In the starting lineup, they need a shooter at that 4 position. But they don't have that. So what else can they do? Well, they can go the route that they've went when he's off the floor, and that is we're just going to triple down on our defense, and we're going to dominate teams that way. And they've done that in 921 minutes. That's a pretty large sample. They're dominating on defense. So one of the changes you could make is start Isaiah Stewart with Jalen Duren. Now, I want to talk about the pros and cons of maybe making that move. The pros is that your defense will be really good. Your defense will get much better. You'll have Ausar and Stu in the starting lineup. Your defense will be fantastic. It already is fantastic, but you want to talk about defensive playmaking, not just having a good defense, being in the right spots. You want to talk about making plays on the defensive end of the floor. Ausar and Stu will cause havoc. They'll cause steals. They'll cause blocks. Like that, you will create offense because you're not just having good defenders. You're having good defensive playmakers. So that would be a positive. The Stu and Jalen Duren minutes have been really good this year. Now, it's not nearly as big of a sample size. It's only in 219 minutes. But they're winning those minutes by 9.1 points per 100 possession. They have a 123 offensive rating and 114 defensive rating. So their offense actually gets better with those two guys on the floor. In the limited sample we have, I attribute a lot of that to the fact that the Pistons are, one, getting out in transition more because of Stu's playmaking on the defensive end of the floor. And they're getting out in transition, getting easy buckets. That's part of the reason why. The other part of the reason I really attribute that to is you're dominating the glass. If the Pistons miss a shot, you got Duren, you got Stu, you got Ausar. All good offensive rebounders for their position, constantly getting putbacks and getting second chance points. So even when you miss a shot, the Pistons are winning the possession battle because they're getting shots back up. They're getting second, third tries. If you extend it to Stu, Duren, and Ausar, they only have 101 minutes played together, but they also have a plus 6.8 net rating. They have a 127 offensive rating. Again, that's something. I think that has a lot to do with defense, but also, like I just mentioned, I think they're dominating the glass. So that's an option. My concern with starting Stu with Duren and Ausar is if you watch the games, I want this to be something you guys watch for, anyone who listens to the podcast moving forward. If they do start Stu, but even in the minutes when they play Stu and Ausar together, when you play Stu with Ausar, or especially Stu, Duren, and Ausar, everyone needs to understand what their spacing roles are. And if you're playing those guys together, you have to understand that Ausar is not the spacer. He has to take up that baseline. If you're having him off ball, he's taking up the baseline, and he's the one cutting into these open gaps. Stu has to be the spacer. He has to be the one sitting in the corner or at the wing. He has to be the one spacing. And in this game against the Clippers yesterday, in the few minutes we saw from them, there was one particular play. I don't remember if it was the second half or not, but there was one particular play where Ausar is on the left block as they run a pick and roll with Jalen Duren and Cade Cunningham in the right wing. And then Stu is kind of just hovering into the paint now as the pick and roll action is happening. And now you got 3 players in the paint all on one team. That's just not going to work. And I think that's something that I've seen pop up on film multiple times. When you try playing them together, Stu's natural, what he's naturally wanting to do is hover towards the paint. And when you have Ausar on the floor with JD, you can't do that. You have to understand you have to be that spacer. You can't clog the paint even more. I've said this over and over. When you play Ausar and JD, everyone else on the floor, you can make it work, and it can make teams pay. And for overall success has been great since January. Like, it's a large sample size of them winning the minutes. However, on the offensive end of the floor, everybody else needs to understand their offensive principles. They have to understand their spacing principles. And if you don't, things can get clogged up. So that's my concern with benching Tobias for Stu. Now, the counter argument to that is Tobias is not really helping in the spacing regards either, and we just did a film breakdown like last week where Tobias was also doing this, where he was cutting into space where they need him to space. So you're not really getting that from Tobias, and Stu's providing much more defensive playmaking, and Stu and Duren have been playing really well together, and Stu's having a good season from deep, and honestly, he's taking roughly around the same volume as Tobias anyways from beyond the arc, so it's like, okay, I could understand starting Stu. Another route that they could go, which is something I've been brainstorming in my head, and one of the people I follow on Twitter also brought this up. Now this is a little bit more risky. However, you could bring Ron in for Tobias, shift Ausar down to the 4, and double down. This would be another way of doubling down on, defensive playmaking. But then also you get faster, and you have another guy who you trust, or maybe not, JB maybe not doesn't trust him as much, but you have another guy who is capable of attacking, slashing to the rim, cutting to the basket, just active guys that want to get downhill and force defense to rotate. That's something that Stu doesn't do that Ron would do. Now, Ron doesn't provide the theoretical spacing that Stu does, but he provides more defense on the perimeter. He's a little bit more active, obviously, in transition, and he provides something different as a slasher. So that's another thing you can go to, but that one right there, then you're really relying on Ron, who actually hasn't been shy about getting threes up. He's not hitting them at a very high percentage at all, but he hasn't been shy about shooting them. But then you come into the another situation of now you don't have another spacer still. You're still running into that problem. The main issue, I think, for the Pistons is they don't really have a great answer for this at the current roster. They don't really have a great answer. But the two other options I can think of is shifting Ausar down to the 4, playing Ron, or Ron move down to the 4, whichever one you want guarding the bigger wings. You probably want Ausar at the point of attack, so you can move Ron down. Though we've seen Ausar do really well off-ball defensively. Like, we know how good he is off-ball as well. Either way, like, whatever position you want them at, you could bring Ausar and Ron together, where those minutes have been good as well. We just haven't seen it a lot. Or you could bring Stu into the starting lineup and kind of get wonky with how you want to operate the center rotation. Either way, I think this is something that the Pistons and JB Bickerstaff need to desperately consider, because like we're going to talk about coming up, there are some numbers to suggest the Pistons might be coming back down to reality just a little bit. And if they want to avoid this, they need to start answering some questions and be willing to make some changes. Despite winning a game here and there, despite not wanting to overreact to the season, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't self-evaluate and make changes where it seems necessary. And I think sitting Tobias is not a must. I'm not saying it's 100% has to happen, but it's definitely a warranted conversation when you have this much of a sample size that the team is this much better. I mean, 8 points better with him off the floor is pretty crazy. So I think you got to consider it. You got to talk about it. I think they should trade for a 4. But if you want some answers on the roster, easiest one, send Stu into the starting lineup. Or if you want to get a little creative, you could try to put Ron into the starting lineup and just dominate in fast breaks and really try to just punish the rim. Let me know, comment section down below, or over on Twitter at Khahil. Coming up, are the Pistons falling back down to reality? We'll break it down after this break. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. During basketball season, there's nothing like being in the building, the energy, the crowd, the first big run that gets everyone on their feet. Fans want to be there for those moments, not stuck refreshing screens or guessing what tickets are really going to cost. That's where Game Time comes in. The Game Time app gives fans the advantage back, making it incredibly easy to score amazing tickets, fast, simple, and without the guesswork. Prices include fees upfront, so the total is clear from the start. Features like the zone deals help unlock great seats at even better value. Whether it's an NBA game or another live event, everything is right there in one place. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app today and get in on the action with Game Time. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on. That's another great way to support the podcast. And like I said earlier, thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network in America. And if you want to take your support to the next level, you can join the Everydayer Club, where you will get access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On Pistons or whatever Locked On podcast that you listen to along with Locked On Pistons. It's compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. You don't have to hear any of the ads anymore. I know a lot of you guys would love that. You also would get an invite to the members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which has a Locked On Pistons channel. But if you're also a Lions fan, or maybe you're an Iowa State fan for, I don't know, the Ravens or whatever sport, you can join that Discord server and talk with fans, the community of any of the Locked On Piston channels. You can head over there by checking out lockedonpistons.supercast.com or tap the link in the show notes to learn more. The Detroit Pistons are having a great season. They are having an absolutely fantastic season. And despite what we are about to talk about coming up, I am not minimizing and I am not trying to take away any credit from this team at all. They are performing much better than I feel like just about any team anybody could have imagined. They are 24-8. They are at the top of the Eastern Conference still. They have a lead on the New York Knicks still. Cade is having a great season. You've seen massive improvement from Jalen Duren on the offensive end of the floor. This team has performed. I'm not trying to downplay that. However, there are some reasons to believe that there's some signs, I should say, that point to the Detroit Pistons maybe coming back down to earth a little bit. Or maybe coming back down to earth may not be the right way of describing it. Having a little slippage. I think that's a better way of saying it. Having a little slippage from where they were maybe a month ago. Since the Pistons were 15-2 and lost to the Boston Celtics, that dropped them to 15-3. Since then, over the last 15 games, they have fallen from top 3 net rating, from a top 5 offense, from a top 3 defense. They've fallen to, and again, they are still a very good team. Like, they're not falling to middle of the pack. Like, they are still really good. But they've fallen just a little bit in net rating to 8th in the NBA. They've fallen from like a top 5-ish offense during that stretch to 10th offensive rating. And they've fallen from top 3 defense to the 6th best defense. Again, it's not major fall-offs. Just a little slippage. And instead of being 15-2, they are 9-6. They are performing like just barely above a 500 team over the last 15 games. Now, a lot of teams go through these types or these parts of the season. It's an 82-game season. It's a very long season. You're going to have great stretches, then you'll have a little 500 stretches, and then hopefully you get right back to having great stretches. So we'll see if the Pistons are just in a little bit of a lull, and they obviously just had, or they're still currently, they're wrapping up tomorrow, the West Coast trip, which hurts them a little. It's going to be a little bit harder, obviously, than the rest of their schedule. So we'll see if they bounce back from this and they just, get back to rolling. But it's clear as day over the last 15 games, they are not performing nearly as high as they were before then. And there's been moments throughout the last 15 games, obviously, when they've looked really good, but there's been way more moments over the last 15 games where they don't look like that team than we saw earlier in the year. Why is that? I think a lot of things are playing into this. Offensively, I feel like they're falling a little bit. And people's immediate response to the offense is falling off a little bit are going to say, well, you need to get, the non-shooters off the floor. You need to get Ausar off the floor. You need to get, play Ivy more, blah, blah. Like, I feel like a lot of people are just going straight to that. That's not why the Pistons offense is falling off. Again, falling off is too strong. Slipping a little bit. The main reason for this, I think, is they are turning the ball over way too much. To start the year during their win streak, they were doing a fantastic job of not turning the ball over. They are taking care of the basketball. Cade wasn't turning the ball over very much. I think that was the main, like we've talked about this over and over about how they were winning the turnover battle. Or not the turnover battle. They were winning the possessions battle. Dominating on the glass. forcing turnovers, and then not turn the ball over and not giving other teams second chance points. I don't think that's been the case over the stretch. It's been more inconsistent, I should say, with what they're doing. During that win streak, they were 14th in the NBA in turnover percentage. They were in the top half of the league in controlling their turnovers. Like I said, they were top 6 net rating, top 6 offense, top 3 defense, all that. That was despite still being a bottom 5 offensive or a bottom 5 3-point rate team. So it wasn't like a lot of their shots were coming from 3 during that point. They weren't getting a lot of threes up. They've never been getting a lot of threes up, but except during that time, they were making teams pay in the half court by executing their spacing principles, finding the right shots, getting to the rim, and then when they get to the rim and they miss, they have so many guys that are able to get another chance at it that it was good offense nonetheless. Now, over the last 15 games, they have fallen from 14th in turnover percentage to 23rd in turnover percentage. I think that's the biggest discrepancy. That right there is the biggest reason I believe that their offense is not as good and they don't look as good as they did before. They're turning the ball over way too much. Way too much. What is contributing to that, I guess, should be the next question. And by the way, real quick, they actually were shooting less threes during their win streak. They were 28th in three-point rate during the win streak. Over the last 15 games, they are 26th in three-point rate, so just a little bit better. But why are they turning the ball over so much? I think there's a few reasons. One, so many guys came back at the same time. Tobias, Harris, Ivy, all came back at the same time. Dennis was playing. Javante was playing. You had so many guys coming back at the same time, at the same moment that so many guys were getting accustomed with their roles and what they were being asked to do, and a lot of these guys had to relearn how to play with certain guys within certain lineups, and it feels like that everyone is no longer. I feel like that players are not nearly as decisive as they were earlier in the year, or I don't want. I guess maybe I should rephrase how I'm saying that, because I don't want to make it seem like that they're just playing like trash the last 15 games. Like, there's been games within the last 15 games where they've looked like that team. Like, it's not like it's never happened. I would say it just hasn't been as consistent. That's how I should be phrasing it. They haven't been as consistently decisive with how they want to play offensively and what they believe their role is. I think that's playing a big part in it. That's one of my main reasons. Two, I don't think Tobias is playing very well. Despite their three-point rate going just a little bit higher and not really being a team that shoots a lot of threes, they were making them, and Tobias is not playing very well. I think that's really hurting them as well. Along with his three-point shooting, it feels like anytime Tobias puts the ball on the ground, it's like an immediate zero possession. Either he's shooting it or turning the ball over, because he's not someone who's making reads. He's not someone who's going to drive to the basket and then find somebody else. As soon as he puts the ball on the ground, that's not a catch and shoot or a post-up, he's driving to the basket. It's going to stall the offense, and he's probably going to pick up the ball, try to look for somebody, and then it's probably 3 seconds coming off the clock trying to just get an outlet. Now you're in like last-second offense. So I think that's playing a part in it. I think Ausar has not been as consistent over these last 15 games. He's had great games, and then he's had games where he hasn't been as good. I tweeted this earlier. Like, if you look at Ausar's like last 10 games, you have a really good stretch of against Milwaukee, Portland, Milwaukee again, Atlanta. Then he has a down stretch against Boston. He didn't play well in that game against Boston. Then against Dallas, he was playing really well, gets ejected. But then he starts the road trip. You got 14 against Charlotte. You got 18 against Portland. You got 19 against Sacramento. He's playing extremely well. Then you have the Utah game. Then you have the Clippers game. So if Ausar could just put a consistent stretch together, like just consistently being aggressive offensively, I think that would really help as well. Like I said, like aggressive Ausar is not 20 points a game. It's the 15 against Portland. It's 13, 6, and 8 against Milwaukee. It's 12, 6, and 3 against Atlanta. It's 14, 4. That's what aggressive Ausar is. 18, 12 against Portland. 19, 6, and 2 against Sacramento. Like, over the last 10 games, or that's 11 games, he's been really good in like 7, 8 of them. But then he has like these duds that you just can't accept. Like, his floor games can't be as bad as they are offensively. Like, you need to have a higher floor, I guess I should say. And I think that's hurting the Pistons at times where he's not having a good game. It's not just that he's not having a good game. It's like it's a low floor when Ausar has a dud. He's missing a lot of free throws, or even in this game against or Utah in the first quarter, he turned the ball over 3 times. Like, you can handle Ausar, not maybe. I mean, he was 3 of 4 in that game from the field. You're like, oh, he's aggressive, he's scoring, but he has 3 turnovers in the first quarter. So like those over an 11-game stretch, having 7, 8 really good games, and then having like just complete duds, I think really hurt a team as well. I think Cade also has been a little bit more consistent as of late as well with the turnovers. I think a lot of things are playing into it. I think Duren is seeing different defenses, and he's still trying to adjust to it. By the way, hitting mid-range jumpers yesterday against the Clippers, that was incredibly impressive. So do I think they're coming back down to reality, which was what the question was when we started this? I don't think they're coming back down to reality. I think they're experiencing what teams experience throughout a season, where defenses start to change how they guard, and especially as a young team, consistency, is like the biggest deal. You have to learn to be consistent day in and day out. And they're 24-8, so I think they're doing a pretty good job of it. But like, can they be better as of late? Yeah, I think they can be better. The Dallas game was a tough one to lose, but the Dallas game was really weird. Like the fouls, what was happening in that game was really tough. That was a annoying game to be a part of. And really, man, actually, let me look at this. Over the last 10 games. I mean, over the last 10 games, they're 7-3. So it's not like they're falling off a cliff. Like, they're 7-3 over the last 10 games. That's still good. A loss to Dallas that was really, like, weird. And then these last 2 losses against Utah that you just can't have, and then against the Clippers where Kawhi turns into Michael Jordan. So I think that the coming back down to reality is maybe a bit, overreactionary. But I do think there are some things that you can see that just need to be improved. The turnovers have to get better. I think Ausar needs to be more consistently aggressive. And I think Jalen Duren is learning how to attack how defenses are playing him. I think they need to make a decision with Tobias. Tobias, I think, is really hurting them. But still, they're really good. I'm not buying into the whole they're falling off a cliff. The schedule gets a little harder now. They're just bad. No, I don't agree with that. I think they're just going through what every team goes through, especially as a young team, and they'll be fine. They just got to learn through it and get accustomed to playing with each other. Actually, last thing I'll leave you guys off with. This has to change, actually. This has been a long segment. They have to have a more consistent rotation. Like, you cannot keep playing guys and yanking guys out and playing 11 guys, 10 guys. I'm enough. Like, a few weeks ago, I said, I'm not going to be on board with it, but let's see it play out. No, I'm done with it. Your best players need to be playing a lot of minutes. Ivy just played 25 minutes. He should be playing at least like 23 minutes a game plus. If you want to start him, okay, then go ahead and start him. But he needs to be playing 23 plus. Ausar needs to be playing 28 plus minutes. Duren, Cade need to be playing a lot of minutes. Isaiah Stewart needs to be playing a lot of minutes. Ron Holland needs to be playing a lot of minutes. Like, forcing minutes to Wu and Karis LeVert and Tobias when they're not playing well. Wu is playing fine in his role. He's not playing bad, but you get what I'm saying. Forcing minutes to them is just it's not helping. It's not helping them. Play your best players. Play Ivy a little bit more. Play Ausar more. Play Ron more, and play Stu more. That's your core. Those are your better guys. Play them. We'll wrap it up there. First All-Star voting is in. Cade Cunningham's in the top 5 in voting. Is there another Piston that joins him? We'll talk about it coming up. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Fridays already feel different during basketball season. FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action even starts. It is easy to check the weekly special before tip-off and make a move before the window closes. Opening the FanDuel app during Happy Hour always brings something new. Boosts, bonuses, and surprises. It adds extra energy to Friday night basketball without overthinking it. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. All-Star votes are in. Actually, I said that. There's a lot of people probably heard that. I was like, oh my God, All-Star voting is over? No. The first set of All-Star voting is in. And Cade Cunningham is fourth in the East amongst all players. The only players that are ahead of him are Giannis, Tyrese Maxey, and Jalen Brunson. He is ahead of Donovan Mitchell, Jaylen Brown, Cat, Jalen Johnson, Pascal, MPJ, who is 10th actually in All-Star voting. LaMelo, we know he has a crazy fan base. Brandon Ingram, OG, like all these guys. He's ahead of all of them. That means like he would be a starter, right? As of right now. I think it's just top 5 voting, right? Because didn't they eliminate positions? I have to check back in on that. I forget if they eliminate positions for that. Are they counting Cade as like a... I think they eliminate positions. I'm pretty sure they did. Anyways, my point is, Cade, it looks like he's a surefire all-star from the voting, from fans. It's crazy to see that Cade has that much love from NBA fans. You can see that he's becoming an NBA face of the league, like one of the faces of the NBA. He is one of the best American-born players. He has an argument to be the best American-born player playing right now. And he's a likable player that the NBA is starting to market. Obviously, the Pistons being first in the East really helps a lot with that. But the NBA is starting to market him a lot more. Like you see him on the NBA Twitter account. You see him on the NBA Instagram account. You see him even in 2K. 2K gave him his own season. Like he's becoming... if you guys don't play 2K, 2K has seasons in which you like get rewards. It lasts like 60 days or whatever. Cade was like season 3, I think it was. He's like on the face of it, whatever. It's a big deal for people who play 2K and everyone under the age of like maybe 20. So that like suggests why, he's becoming such a likable player and so many people rock with him. So that's really cool to see. I like imagine listening to this. Imagine 2 years ago, listening to this podcast and thinking, man, how long did it take for us to get there? Like it's crazy. Like every now and then I just sit back and think about literally just a year and a half ago. Yeah, a year and a half ago, we were talking about whether Monty Williams was still going to be this coach. They've come a long way, Cade especially. So good for Cade. Is there another Piston in the top 20 of voting? There is not. Orlando has 2 players, and Paolo and Franz. That's terrible. I don't need to say anything more about that. I think you guys know where I stand with that. New York has quite a few players. They got Mikal Bridges and Josh Hart, along with Jalen Brunson and Cat. And OG Anunoby. So their entire starting lineup's in the top 20. Is Scotty Barnes? I just realized, is Scotty Barnes not on this list? Scotty not being on this list is kind of crazy. Brandon Ingram is, though, from Toronto. I was looking. My point of looking at it, I was looking to see if there was any teams with multiple players. Oh, Philly has 2 players, Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. I think that's it. I don't think any other team has multiple guys. Yeah, Boston doesn't have another one, right? Yeah. So those are the only teams with multiple guys. Now, New York has 5, which is pretty crazy. Could Jalen Duren, who I think is the only other guy that could really get into the All-Star consideration, could Jalen Duren make it with the fan vote? Probably not. He's not as popular of a player, and we know that the All-Star voting is about popularity, and it's just a fan contest, you feel me? So I don't think he's going to rise up these ranks in fan voting. Do I think he could make the All-Star team nonetheless? He could. I think I would put the odds at like it's more likely he doesn't, but he definitely is on he has a chance for sure. Especially if the Pistons keep this first seed throughout the next month and a half and he starts to play a little better. I do think his production has slipped a little bit, especially on the defensive end. I did not like what we've seen from defensively last week. But again, it's not a big deal. You go through these ups and downs throughout a season, just want to be consistent. But when it comes to making an all-star team, it's going to be tough to... You got Giannis, Tyrese, Jalen Brunson, Cade, Donovan Mitchell, Jaylen Brown, Cat. That's 7 guys. My guy, I almost said 9. That's 7 guys. Then you're looking at Jalen Johnson, I think maybe gets in. You're looking at maybe a second New York Knick. I think it's possible they get to. MPJ, I think, might make an all-star team this year. So you're looking at like 8 at that point, 8 or 9 guys. He could be fighting for that last spot, but I would put the odds at not likely. Like if I had to do like minus 105, I think he's a minus 155 favorite to not make it, and like it's plus 150 that he does, whatever. So it's he's close, but yeah, he's the only other guy I think that would have a chance at doing it, not anyone else on the team. I mean, if he does, if the Pistons were to get 2 guys, that would be crazy for them to have. But just seeing that Cade might be an all-star starter with where they were 2 years ago is just crazy to see. See that Cade has over 1 million votes. There's only 6 players or 7 players with 1 million votes. It's Steph, Jokic, Luka, Giannis, Tyrese Maxey, Jalen Brunson, and then Cade. He has more votes than SGA. He has more votes than Wemby. He has more votes than Ant Edwards. It's crazy to think. But let me know in the comment section down below if you guys think another player will join Cade in the All-Star game. What do you guys have the current All-Star teams looking like? But that's all I've got for you guys today. Thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. Free and available on all your podcast platforms. Hit that subscribe button to the YouTube channel. Leave us a 5-star review, whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on. And until next time, I will see you guys later. Stay safe out there, and peace out, everybody.